She made my daughter promise not to tell. She was left alone in a car for 4 hours on Christmas Eve. Hi, I'm Ray, 35. And I used to think the worst betrayal I'd ever face was being ghosted by my ex-fiancé 2 weeks before our wedding, but that was before my 7-year-old daughter came home, clutching her stuffed fox, and whispered. Auntie told me to stay in the car while they went to the toy store. I didn't scream. She'd been sitting alone in a frozen parking lot for 4 hours. And that's when everything, my trust, my silence, my patience shattered. The snow was falling soft, that kind of quiet snowfall that usually makes you feel safe. But the second Ava said those words, it felt like the whole world got pulled inside out. We were standing by the trunk, unloading her little pink duffel bag. She had chocolate smeared across one cheek and sleepy eyes. At first, I figured it was just a sugar crash after a weekend with my sister and her boys. But then, she spoke low, steady, like she was still trying to believe it hadn't happened. Auntie said not to tell you. It would ruin Christmas. I didn't speak. I didn't ask questions. I didn't comfort her, not yet. I turned to my husband and said, drive to their house. I could barely keep my hands still in the car. My fingers kept twitching, my jaw locked tight. The silence felt radioactive. My husband gripped the wheel harder than usual. He knew, whatever was coming, it wasn't going to be quiet. When we got there, everything looked normal. Cozy, twinkling lights, fake snow on the windowsills, wreath on the door. Inside, I could hear laughter, plates clinking, Nerf guns cocking. My sister Claire was on the couch in her stupid fuzzy socks, cider in hand, like she hadn't just left my daughter to freeze alone in a car. She smiled when she saw me. Hey, you're early. I didn't answer. I walked over and grabbed her by the messy bun she always tied up when she didn't feel like showering, yanked her off the couch. She hit the floor with a gasp, and then I slapped her, open palm, across the face. The sound was louder than I expected. It cut through the music, the laughter, the whole house. No one stopped me. Not even my husband. Not even our parents. She left Ava in the car, I said. For 4 hours. Claire blinked at me like I was overreacting, like I was the one ruining Christmas. But I saw it. That flicker in her eyes. She knew I wasn't lying. She just didn't care enough to confess. And then her own son ran in, toy bag in hand, and said the words that set the whole room on fire. That's the day Ava had to stay in the car, remember? Because you said she'd complain too much. I turned toward the hallway. Ava stood there, holding her stuffed fox, watching us like it was a TV show. No tears, just quiet. That's when I realized my daughter didn't cry because she already knew not to expect anyone to come back. Claire stayed on the floor, one hand to her cheek like she still couldn't believe I'd actually hit her. She kept looking around the room, hoping someone would come to her defense. But no one did. Not my mom, who just dropped a tray of cupcakes. Not my dad, who sat frozen in his recliner like someone had pulled the battery out of him. Claire tried to recover. She had her tablet. I cracked the window. It wasn't even that cold. You told her to lie to me, I cut in. You told a 7-year-old not to ruin Christmas by telling her mother she was locked in a car alone for 4 hours. Claire scoffed. It wasn't 4. She held up 4 fingers. I snapped. She didn't guess. She counted. My dad stood up finally. He looked at Claire like she was something he hadn't raised. Claire, he said quietly, is that true? Claire's mouth opened, but she didn't speak. That silence was an answer. The mood in the room shifted. My mom sat down like her legs gave out. Claire's husband tried to speak, but my husband raised a hand without even looking at him. Nobody moved toward me. That's how you know people know, when they don't rush in with excuses. I turned to Ava, still in the hallway, still clutching that fox to her chest like it was keeping her glued together. You okay, baby? I asked. She nodded. One of those tiny nods that's more about not making things worse than actually answering. Go wait in the car with Dad, okay? I said. We'll go home in a minute. She didn't ask questions. Just obeyed, quiet and invisible. The way kids learn to be when they've already been dismissed once. When the door clicked shut behind her, I walked straight into the guest room where we'd stacked gifts for Claire's boys. Nerf guns, board games, a huge Lego set I'd waited in line for on Black Friday. I picked up the Lego set and dropped it into a trash bag. Then another gift. Then all of them. Anything that had her boys' names on it went in. No speeches, no drama. Just garbage bags full of every favor, every gift. Every time I'd gone the extra mile for her family while she couldn't bother to crack the car window more than an inch. Claire watched me, stunned. You're seriously doing this? You seriously thought I wouldn't? And then I left, the bags in one hand, the door wide open behind me, and the silence of a family finally realizing the consequences had arrived. 3 hours later, I was back home, sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by garbage bags full of gifts I couldn't return. The tags with their names still stuck on. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just started sorting return, donate, trash. Every piece was a reminder of how long I'd been trying to earn a relationship with someone who saw me as a free babysitter and a backup wallet. My husband was in the kitchen, pacing. You want me to call your mom? Your dad? Anyone? I shook my head. They'll call. Just not to say sorry. Right on cue. My phone buzzed. Mom. I let it ring. Then it was Dad. Then Claire, of course. A text this time. I told you she was fine. You're blowing this way out of proportion. I'm her aunt, not her prison guard. She still didn't get it. Still didn't understand that this wasn't about her forgetting to buckle a seatbelt or serving the wrong snack. This was about trust. About my kid being trained not to tell the truth because it would ruin Christmas. That night, I dropped Ava off at her godmother's. When I told her what happened, she didn't ask for details. Just opened the door, saw Ava's face, and said, "Stay as long as you need." Ava curled up on her couch like it was the safest place in the world. Blanket up to her chin, cartoon on low volume. Like nothing had happened. But something had, and that something shattered every single, she didn't mean it, excuse I'd made for Claire over the years. I didn't even go back inside when I got home. I opened my laptop in the car. Logged into the joint bank account I'd opened to help Claire get back on her feet 3 years ago, the one she'd never put a dime into, and I drained my half into my own account. Then I froze the rest. Cancelled the shared credit card. Texted the landlord that the emergency rent assistance I used to send every other month was done. The next morning, my mom called again. I picked up. She came clean, she said. Sort of. Eli told us everything. Ava too. We didn't know. I swear. What did she say? That she just wanted time with her boys. That she was tired. That watching someone else's kid didn't feel fair. There it was. Her truth. Mine was simpler. I was done. No more gifts. No more rides. No more money, I said. She's on her own now. My mom didn't argue. Not like she used to. She just said softly, I don't know what happened to her. Did. She got used to being rescued. 2 days after Christmas, right as we were finishing breakfast, Ava still in her pajamas, humming along to The Grinch on TV, there was a knock at the door. My husband peeked through the window. His jaw tightened. They're here. I opened the door and saw my parents on the porch. And behind them, standing awkward and alone in the cold, was Claire. No coat. Just a hoodie pulled tight, holding a single, poorly wrapped gift like it was a peace offering from a war she'd lost. She didn't move to come inside. Just stood, eyes red, cheeks windburned. The gift was wrapped in wrinkled foil paper, crushed on one corner. Even from here, I'd tell it wasn't for Ava. It was for me. A symbol, a gesture, an act. I looked at my parents. Only you, I said quietly, and stepped aside. Claire blinked like she'd misheard. But when she tried to follow them in, raised my hand again. Only them. She froze. My parents walked in silently, not saying a word. The door closed behind them with a thud that felt final. We sat in the living room, nobody touching their tea. My mom finally spoke first. She's not sleeping. She keeps pacing, whispering to herself. Says she made the worst mistake of her life. My dad added, she wants to apologize. She's afraid it's too far gone. I didn't flinch. She chose to leave a child alone in a car. She didn't forget. She made a decision. My mom looked exhausted. Her hands trembled slightly where they clutched the mug. We yelled at her. The night you left. We didn't comfort her. We didn't protect her. Your dad, he said he was ashamed. I looked at him, surprised. My dad had never used that word before. In our house, ashamed meant something deeper than anger. She wants to come inside, my mom said softly. I got up and opened the door. Claire had stepped forward, hopeful, but I didn't move. I leaned on the frame. You told Ava it was her fault if she said anything. I was scared, Claire said. I didn't want to ruin the holiday. No, I said. You didn't want consequences. Then she said the thing that broke whatever thread she had left. She wasn't locked in a trunk. People leave kids in cars all the time. I stepped outside and shut the door behind me. You're not sorry. You're just caught. Claire looked down. Then she tried another angle. I lost my job last week. That's why I took the boys out. I didn't want them to know. I was trying to keep things normal. And you left my daughter to freeze for the illusion of normal? I thought I could fix it before you found out. I shook my head. Don't come back without a real apology. One where you don't talk about your pain. Just hers. I turned to go back inside. She didn't follow. She didn't leave either. She sat down on the curb like she was staging her own punishment, still holding that soggy, warped gift. And I let her, because for the first time, she was sitting in the cold alone, and no one was coming to get her. For the first hour, I thought it was performative. Claire stayed out there on the curb, arms wrapped around herself, that useless gift balanced in her lap like it might save her. The snow was coming down steady now, not a storm, but that slow, biting kind that settles into your clothes and makes your fingers burn. At first, I thought, she'll leave. She always does. She sulks, storms off, sends a dramatic text about being mistreated. But she didn't. She just sat inside. My parents watched from the window. No one said it, but we all expected her to knock again, to shout, to plead. But Claire just curled tighter and stared at the sidewalk like it might apologize on her behalf. My mom spoke first, quiet. She's going to get frostbite. So did Ava, I said. She didn't argue. That was new. I busied myself in the kitchen, made cocoa for Ava, who was back home now and watching cartoons in a blanket fort. I lit a candle, swept the floor, the rituals of normal life. Louder than yelling, but part of me kept checking the window. And still, Claire sat. 15 minutes. 30. 45. Her sweatshirt had darkened in patches from melting snow. Her hair was stuck to her forehead, stiff and frozen. The foil-wrapped gift looked like something fished out of a trash can. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel cruel. I felt tired. And yet, I let her sit. Because this wasn't just about punishment. This was about truth. For the first time in our lives, Claire had no one rushing to defend her. No mom stepping in with soft excuses. No husband saying she didn't mean it. No big sister sweeping up the mess. She was alone. Truly alone. And honestly, she needed to be. My dad broke the silence. Eventually. We didn't stop her, he said. All these years. We thought she'd outgrow it. She didn't. He nodded. Maybe this is the only way. I wanted to believe that. But another part of me, the part that had picked Claire up from a bar at M, bailed her out of late rent. Covered birthday gifts she forgot to buy knew better. Claire didn't change. She just circled back until people let her pretend she had. Out the window, her fingers were twitching now. She was rubbing her arms, maybe for warmth, maybe for comfort. At one point she looked up at the door again, not like she expected it to open, but like she still couldn't understand why it hadn't already. That was Claire's whole life. Doors opening. Consequences delayed. But not this time. An hour passed. Then another. The snow didn't let up. Claire was soaked, shivering, cheeks blotchy from cold, and maybe crying. But I didn't go out. No one did. Eventually, my mom stood from the couch and said, "We should go." I walked them to the door. Claire saw them through the window and stood up fast, her legs wobbly, eyes wide. Like maybe this was her shot. Like maybe our parents would convince me to let her in, but they didn't say a word to her. My dad walked straight past, didn't even glance her way. My mom hesitated just a second, looked at Claire, then at me, then followed him. The car doors shut. They pulled away without slowing down. Claire stood frozen on the sidewalk, alone. I didn't watch long. I pulled the curtain, locked the door, and went back to the kitchen where cocoa had gone cold. The knock didn't come again. Not for an hour. Not at all. But I knew she hadn't left. From the upstairs hallway window, I'd still see her pacing like a lost dog. Her gift, that sad, mushy lump of a present clutched to her chest like it had answers, and still, I did nothing. Because this was her consequence. Not pain. Not public humiliation. Not another screaming match or a dramatic scene. Silence. No rescue. No grace. Just space for her to feel it. Everything she'd never let settle before. The loneliness. The shame. The moment where the world stops fixing it for you. I'd spent most of my life watching Claire skate away from the worst parts of herself. People mistook her charm for accountability, her tears for regret. But I'd been there too many times. Watched her cry and then do the exact same thing weeks later. This wasn't her first mistake. Just her first time sitting in the cold after making one. Hours later, I looked again. The sidewalk was empty. She was gone. I never saw a car pick her up. Maybe she walked. Maybe someone eventually came. But she left behind the gift. Still there, soggy, sagging under the weight of snow and whatever was inside. I left it there overnight. Ava never asked about it. She didn't say Claire's name again. Didn't ask when she'd visit. Just settled back into her life like she'd deleted something heavy from her chest. By morning, the gift looked even worse. The paper was slush. The box, swollen like it had soaked in all the guilt Claire refused to feel. I scooped it up with the snow shovel and dumped it straight in the trash. No ceremony. No explanation. Just garbage where it belonged. A week passed. Then came the text. No name. Just a number I didn't recognize. I'm trying. Please don't give up on me. I stared at it for a long time. Not because it moved me, it didn't, but because it was so typical. That vague, cowardly tug on a heartstring she no longer had access to. Like all the work of healing was mine to do now. Like the apology was implied, not required. I didn't respond. Claire had always treated apologies like fire extinguishers. Break glass in case of exposure, not remorse. And even then, only when she felt backed into a corner. This time, I wasn't backing down. I started laughing more. The tension that used to sit behind her eyes, the kind that only shows up when a kid's trying to not make things harder, started to ease. She asked if her godmother's daughter could sleep over. I said yes. They made popcorn, wrapped themselves in blankets, and giggled under pillow forts. I watched them from the hallway. Just stood there, hand on the light switch, listening. Ava was not healed. Not magically fixed. But okay. And me? I could breathe. Not in that shallow way I used to when I was waiting for the next favor from Claire. The "can you just" and "do you mind" texts that always came wrapped in guilt and obligation. I was free from all of it. A few months later, a letter showed up. No stamp. No return address. Just a folded piece of paper tucked in our mailbox. My full name written in her shaky, try-hard cursive. Not Sis, not Nance, just Nancy. Like that somehow made it more sincere. I stood there in the kitchen holding it, feeling the weight of it, not just the paper, but the manipulation inside. I knew it was filled with all the right words. Probably rehearsed. Probably cried over. Probably full of Claire-isms about pain and growth and learning. I held it over the sink. Lit a match. Watched it curl, blacken, vanish. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. Because I didn't need to hear her say she was sorry. I needed her to be sorry. And she wasn't. She hadn't done the work. She hadn't made amends to Ava. She hadn't once acknowledged that the person she hurt the most wasn't me, was a little girl holding a stuffed fox in a frozen car, watching daylight fade and wondering when someone would come back for her. Claire didn't want forgiveness. She wanted access. Big difference. Forgiveness takes work, humility, time, accountability. She didn't offer any of that. Just a soggy gift and a text saying, "Don't give up on me." She didn't even realize that I already had, not out of hate, out of love for my daughter, for my peace, for the version of myself that used to believe family meant unconditional. Now, I know better. Family doesn't get to hurt you over just because you share a last name. Family shows up, protects, apologizes like they mean it, not because they got caught, but because they understand what they broke. Claire never understood, and I was finally done explaining it to her. Spring came quietly. The snow melted off the porch, and with it, the last evidence of that miserable December week. Ava stopped clutching her fox so tightly at bedtime, started sleeping through the night again, started trusting again, slowly, like a kid dipping her toe back into warm water after nearly freezing to death. She never asked about Claire, never mentioned her name, and I never volunteered it. We planted tulips in the backyard the first weekend of April. Ava wore those little gloves with cartoon frogs on them. She said, Flowers grow better when they're warm and safe. And I remember thinking, so do kids. So do mothers. So do boundaries. One afternoon, got another message. This one wasn't a number, it was from her old email address. I'm in therapy now, working on myself. I realize what I lost. You and Ava deserved better. I'm sorry. There was no follow-up. No ask. No can we talk? No, please let me explain. Just a neat little email with polished regret and the tidy punctuation of someone who still believed that saying the right thing erased the actual thing. I didn't respond, because even if every word in that message was sincere, even if her therapy was real, even if she finally understood the damage, that apology was a bandage on a broken bone. And it wasn't mine to heal. It belonged to Ava. She was the one who sat alone in the dark, tablet dead, legs pulled up to her chest while families passed by outside laughing, warm, safe. She was the one who had to learn that sometimes even the people who are supposed to protect you will leave you cold and alone, and then tell you not to ruin Christmas by speaking up. Claire wanted forgiveness without facing Ava. That told me everything. Months passed. Ava thrived. Summer came. She joined swim class. Wore mismatched socks every day like it was a personal brand. She laughed louder, trusted more, slept deeper. I watched her float on her back in the pool one afternoon, arms out, face toward the sky, and I realized this was the prize. Not a clean ending, not a family reunion, not even justice, just peace. And no more fear, no more guilt, no more wondering if protecting my daughter meant overreacting. I chose her. That day in the car, that night in the kitchen, every day since. And the door? It stayed closed. Claire didn't knock again. Maybe she finally understood. Maybe she didn't. Either way, the silence became part of the healing, not a punishment, a boundary, one that Ava never had to learn the hard way again. And me? I finally got to be the kind of mother I promised I'd be, the kind who listens the first time a child says, I didn't scream, because next time, she won't have to, she'll already know. I'd be there. Always. And no matter what.